welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 75. I'm your host, The Don, and every single week, well, aside from last week, but mostly every single week, I'm here with my co-host, Chatters. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Today we're going to be talking about quite a lot of news that we're going to catch up from last week. So we're going to do, stuff like, Matrix happened, something to do with the Matrix. We got some casting choices, and we got some reviews going on about, Krypton and Legion. But yeah, first we want to touch on what we talked about last week, which was The Boys. And we pretty much both liked it, right? Really liked it. I think it's one of the best shows out there.
Yeah, especially given that we're currently in a climate where, superhero shows are kind of like a little bit of like a dime a dozen. Disney's kind of coming out with a bunch of new shows that are going to be like official in their MCU universe. But especially given our backgrounds, we watch like a bunch of like kind of trashy CW superhero TV shows. The Boys was definitely like a breath of fresh air. I think like a really good comparison is that this show is very much like what Watchmen was for comic, and in a sense that The Boys is a flip on the modern superhero genre while capturing the essence from the original material, but also putting it in like a modern context. Because even I was talking to a few people that watch it and they loved it. And when I was kind of talking about some of the stuff that was in the comics, they're like, oh, that's really interesting. For example, all the social media aspect isn't a component in the actual comic itself, but it plays a big role in the show, and it really does set the tone of these superheroes being very, very vain and up themselves.
It does bring it to a very much modern age of superheroes, and I guess it conveys the whole they're pretty much assholes, or there's a dark side of things that you don't really know about them. It's basically you're seeing the PR version of them.
Yeah, they're not all perfect, Captain America, Steve Rogers, Superman, kind of personalities. You have even in those kind of comics, you'll have the antisocial guy like Batman, but even Batman's still a good dude, in the end, right? And yeah, I think it's great how well the show is done, because it was reported that it's one of the most watched Amazon TV shows. And on top of that, it's one of the highest rated series on IMDb. I think it was at 36, but at the time of recording, it's currently 39. I guess the one thing, because we were talking a little bit about it before the show, a lot of the rating is kind of based around people actually going in and actively reviewing the show. You'll have something Game of Thrones that has I think it was 1.5 million people reviewed it.
Yeah, but that's as I mentioned before, that shows very much the zeitgeist at the time. Everyone knew about Game of Thrones. I think especially over time, obviously up until season 3 onwards, I think that's when it hit its peak almost, and it kept on growing. So it's The Boys, for a brand new season that's going to come out with season 1, and obviously getting renewed for a second season. I think it's pretty good for a starting off point.
Yeah, I think it's excellent. I only wish more of the show comes out, and that it continues to have be on the role that it is, especially given that I think it's no longer going to be borrowing as heavily from the comics, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, we'll have to see, because obviously the team who've made it have done an excellent job, and hopefully with Amazon bankrolling it, Bezos can drop some of his personal money stash to up the production and people if he needs to.
Well, it's the streaming wars which are currently going on right now, so we're getting top quality content because everyone's trying to get the new service, right? So that's why we're getting really good TV, and it's compared to Netflix, which is its only value really is just its streaming service. They don't do anything else. Amazon has the benefit of, I guess, having a whole store and basically selling their services and everything else. So
Yeah,
it's
like
like,
Twitch and all that kind of
yeah, so
stuff. You get a lot.
essentially, like they've got enough money to bankroll, like, they can make a loss on a TV show that no one watches because in the end, like, they've got all this other business to do. But it's
Mhm.
like, for Netflix, they have to do is like keep it innovating or die, basically. So that's a
Yeah.
problem that they have. So maybe at some point, one day someone buys them up. Who knows? But you never know.
Well,
You never know.
yeah, I mean, it's still pretty young, I think, in terms of, as you said, like this quote unquote streaming wars, right? Like, I think I said it like a couple of weeks ago, with Stranger Things. I think there was like a huge, like a significant amount of people kind of came back to resubscribing for that month because they purely just want to watch Stranger Things, and then obviously they're going to finish that month and go back to not subscribing to Stranger Things and Netflix anymore, right?
The Stranger
Um,
Things service.
yeah, I mean that's how you can kind of look at it, almost like, oh, I'm paying $6 to watch a 10 episode show. Like if that's what they get, I don't think Amazon is necessarily complaining, right? But
Mm.
at the same time, they would probably prefer if you stuck around a little bit longer to watch I don't know, Big Mouth or whatever the hell other shows are on Netflix now. I don't know. Too many shows that I kind of don't care about.
Yeah,
So
we get,
hopefully.
it's basically getting flooded. So sometimes, like, I've had to learn the hard way. It's like sometimes you just gotta drop a show and just be like, nah, that was it. Don't really need to watch anymore.
Exactly. But speaking of Amazon, uh, they recently announced a cast of a new Amazon series, which is based on a book book series known as Wheel of Time. Now it's like you see, I know somebody who read the book series. I haven't personally read it, but he really likes it, and he told me like, oh, it's a really great, like, all the like the basis for it, and it's like, it's medieval fantasy, magic and all that jazz. And there's essentially it's about a journey with a group of people about like a dragon coming and somebody who's gonna either like save or destroy humanity, right? Like just to kind of put it simply down. So I think especially given like the power vacuum that has been left after Game of Thrones, like people do want something fantasy-esque to sink their teeth into, and maybe this one might be if they do a good job. Like again, we mentioned the boys has done good under Amazon. Hopefully, I hope that this does well, but
Mm.
obviously, time will tell, like whether or not.
Haha, time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Time will tell whether it'll be any good. Like they've only done just the casting. Like I think like going in, there's obviously been some changes, obviously to the original book series, but it's not too much of a bothersome thing with me because obviously they're kind of doing the same with The Witcher, right? The Witcher
Mm.
series that are coming out on
my
Netflix,
my
right?
whole thing with a lot of this stuff is just the direction of the show. Like, what is it trying to
Hmm.
portray? What is its themes? I think that's, to me, what I want to see out of everything. So it's like,
Exactly.
if it's a good adaptation of the books and that's what people want, then go ahead with it.
Yeah.
As you mentioned before with like fantasy, like Amazon is pretty much on a roll almost. Like, they have the boys, they have a lot of different stuff, but like they got Wheel of Time, and if you want another fantasy thing, I think people keep on forgetting. I think next year, they're coming out with that Lord of the Rings TV show. So, yep,
Mm,
and that as well. So it's
that's
like,
true.
but I have no clue what that, like, that to me is very
Uh,
curious because I'm like, we've got pretty good
it's
adaptation of the books. So I don't know.
isn't it just going to be like similar Cimmerillion stuff?
Yeah,
I'm assuming
I think
like
it's not the books, but it's like I'm very
yeah,
interested to see what like extra lore they can put into
from
the I guess the Middle Earth world.
from what I understand, the Cimmerillion is basically like one big lore dump. Like in terms of like, hey, here's some shit. Like it's not necessarily a story, but it's like, hey, here's some shit that happened or has happened in like the Lord of the Rings universe. And obviously, like there isn't like a full script there, so it allows them to kind of like play around with like the history and stuff, and and what essentially happened. But that can also be bad because given the Hobbit movies were pretty. I don't know. I felt like that should have just been two movies, right? Do you agree? If
Yeah,
if they were
pretty
gonna
much two movies.
like,
It very much could not have like
uh,
it didn't have to
I
extend,
don't-
but Hobbit has its own problems. I feel like it's like I haven't really watched them since, but I got a feeling that if I
mm.
did watch them, I'd probably just be like they're very average, and they're probably like they're not. I think the main problem is obviously they're not as good as the Lord of the Rings movies,
there's
and
a lot of filler as
part of the
well.
reason is because they wanted to extend it to 3 movies.
Ah,
Um,
man, it should like yeah. If you were gonna do it, it should at least like if you had to stretch it out, at least make it 2 movies, not 3. That's the thing that I didn't even watch the third one. I don't think because I don't remember.
I
Although I
think
know what
yeah.
happens
I
in the
do remember.
books.
I think the second one was the best one. The smog one, Smaug.
Smoke, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
that like
The
the
smoke.
last half an hour was just basically that, and I'm like, oh, that's a good point. That should have been at the end of like I don't know, like the first movie, but
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, and to be honest, like that scene with Smog kind of was like how I pictured the scene in my head when I read that book as a kid. Like, because The Hobbit is essentially like a kid like a child book kind of thing,
it is a
right?
kids
Like,
book, yeah, basically,
yeah,
and compared to Lord of the
and
Rings, yeah.
yeah, especially in compared to Lord of the Rings, and yeah, like they basically animated it pretty well, especially given how like fantasy and dragons and all that, like they did a really good job. So yeah, you're completely right. Like Amazon has a capacity to kind of push out good things. So I can only hope that this looks good, and hopefully they'll release a trailer that reflects that. Like as I was saying before, like the Witcher series, like it doesn't look that amazing, at least given like Henry Cavill looks amazing because he's just fucking
Yeah,
buff
he's our
Geralt.
Superman.
Yeah, buff fucking Geralt, which is dope as fuck. But like the other shit is just like, do I care that much about these side characters? Like, come on, like pick your main character and I don't know. I feel
My
like
whole worry for that show, from what I've seen, is like you don't really see him as much. I got a feeling that he's gonna be like the main character, but not really the main character. Like it's gonna
mm,
portray him as the main character, but really the bigger character development or whatever it may be will be from like another character. Then he's just gonna be there, part of the story.
like yeah, like Yennefer and what I forget, Siri,
Yeah,
that's how.
series. So I think like it's probably their story, but like Geralt's there, so
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know about
I'm
that.
getting the feeling that's the case as well, especially given that like both of those characters have like a pretty close connection with Geralt in the first place, right? So it makes sense that like in their origins, he's there. I think my problem is like, is it going to be one of those how to describe it, like almost like a Stranger Things formula, right? Where it's like three characters or three groups of people are separated and then it all comes together at the end of the season. Like I hate that shit.
Describing that, I got a feeling it might be just because I remember
Fuck
seeing, I
me.
rememof because like for example, the Witcher logo for the TV show. I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
look it
it's
up or
got
anything.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
got the
yeah, yeah.
three logos. I'm just like most of the time, like especially for the game series or the books, the main logo is the wolf.
The schools,
Yeah,
right?
the
The
schools, and
schools.
the main
Yeah.
one is the wolf, which is like basically Geralt's whole thing.
Geralt.
So I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. And then when I look at the TV show
It,
logo, I'm like, yeah, there's like three different things here. I got a feeling there's gonna be some sort of
I
prophecy
don't know.
thing. I don't know.
I hate that because I think like the okay, this is what I would prefer to do for them to do, right? Because they probably won't do this. Is essentially okay. It's focused on Geralt, and then we follow him learning, learning to deal with things in the wild, and having to use his Witcher powers, and us learning about his like school of like wolf witchering or wolf magic or whatever it may be called. Sorry,
Hmm.
it's all kind of out there, but like, and then like it'd be like in season 2 or when you meet this new character, then they introduce like a new school and it's like, oh, there are other witches schools, like that's supposed to be like the surprising aspect when you already have it, like, oh, there's 3 schools. Oh, like there's less mystery behind
Hmm.
it as opposed to like it's much like how they do it in anime, right? Like when you fight this one guy and ooh, what's this new character, what's his special ability, what's it
Or
kind of
even
keeps like the
yeah, even
audience.
like with something like a My Hero Academia almost, where it's
Yeah.
like the first season, even like in the second season, they didn't like no wait was it no yeah first season was just in the school, and then I think the second
Hmm.
season was like the third season was the the arena
The
arc. So that's
fight.
when
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so that's when they
yeah.
started to have like
That's
all
what I
the
mean.
other characters come in, like, oh man, other schools, and you might not be the
Yeah, yeah,
best
yeah,
out of
yeah. So
everyone that you think you are.
yeah, it kind of like it opens up the world to being bigger than what it originally. Even though the show kind of does straight up say like, oh, it's like there are other schools. It's just like the one that you're following is generally considered the best. But then like you go and see, oh, like this other school is not that bad. Like these other heroes like have cool powers, and it's the same thing here. But if they kind of do this kind of split thing, I don't know. Like, look, I'm gonna have my Netflix subscription. I'm probably not gonna have anything to watch when it comes out. Maybe I don't know. So I'll watch it regardless. But it's just a I don't know. It's like it's this whole thing about like um what is it? Netflix becoming a little bit predictable, cookie cutter. It's
They've
manufactured.
basically got a formula.
Yeah, and it's weird, and I don't know, I don't like it. But think talking about more manufactured things, they recently announced the title for the new James Bond movie. It's called No Time to Die. I like the title name because it does kind of sound very much like a typical um James Bond title. It's like time and die. Like I feel like
Yeah,
those
it's something got to
two.
do with die, like never die,
Yeah,
like
something like
past
that.
tense, present tense, usually dying, killing,
Not
something like that.
doing things like it's an excellent title name. So that alone kind of uh, uh piques my interest. But I think the problem with the James Bond series is like I feel like they don't know what to do with it because it's like the latest series are kind of like a reboot, right? Or like semi reboot, semi
Mm. Well, with this new James Bond,
continuation, right?
yeah, it's kind of like no one really knows, but like I think I remember, and there was a whole thing with the theory of like 007 is basically just a code name, or like even like James Bond is also a code name with 007. So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of explains away the whole like timeline thing, or even but and then the thing is like, well, Judi Dench's character was like pretty much there for like the Timothy not Timothy Dalton, the Pierce Brosnan ones. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like, okay,
correct.
that's a little bit weird to have that him and Daniel
Yeah,
Craig.
yeah, because she was the new M, when the old M, which was like a guy, was like replaced, and Judi Dench took his role,
Mm.
right? So like, I think I definitely can get behind the idea that like, yeah, there's like, well, I mean, there's the whole thing about the new James Bond actress that got cast. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
uh
There was that.
isn't she? Isn't she the
She's
the
the new,
actress
yeah.
from Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I
I'm
think so.
pretty
I think
sure.
so. Yeah, yeah. But like the whole thing is
Uh,
like she's the new 007. So like that's what it said. So either I think my whole theory with the movie and what they're gonna do is, either Daniel Craig like retires or whatever,
yeah,
and
passes the mantle on
pass it
or
on,
whatever.
or what happens is he does the exact same thing, but at the start of the movie where he's basically retired, he doesn't want to be James Bond anymore, which basically what Daniel Craig doesn't want to do anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then the 007 that's come to replace him is the woman, and she doesn't do as a good job, or like she dies in
Right.
the mission, and then basically who's at the MI5 is basically being like, yeah, like we need you back because like our other one died or she's been kidnapped. So I think that's maybe what they're gonna do, because like the I think the whole article is like she's the new 007. So I'm like, okay, there can't be two of them, so something's
Well,
gonna
yeah,
give.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Someone needs to get axed, and I mean, it's gonna 100% be Daniel Craig because he I feel like he doesn't want to be the character, but like he also likes money, so they just throw enough money at him, and he's just like, I guess I'll.
Yeah, that
You
was my whole theory of the
ah,
whole like multiverse with MCU. I'm like, oh yeah, one day they'll open up the different Earths, and then they'll be like, Christopher Nolan's Batman's, and it's like all you have to do is just give a boatload of money to Christopher Nolan, what's his name, Christian Bale, and just like here,
oh
just
yeah,
play Batman for like 30 minutes. Here you go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When they do that, yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty dope, like if they could end up doing something like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's like they're kind of like, again, they're kind of, I feel like with James Bond they don't know what they're doing with it, because essentially it's like I don't feel like the last movie was that good. It
It's not Skyfall, because Skyfall was the good one. It's the
Yeah,
other
Skyfall was a good one. Spectre.
Spectre. Yeah.
Yeah, I think aspects of Spectre was good, but like overall it was like it's way better than Quantum of Solace.
It's because I think what it was between two worlds. Like, I feel like Spectre is very much harkening back to the old, I guess, campy version, like the not Pierce Brosnan, the Roger Moore ones,
Moore.
where it's a little bit
Yeah.
more goofy, like,
Hmm.
it has these like
Doesn't take itself seriously. Yeah, like when he lands on the
on the
the one where he
couch.
lands
Yeah,
on the
it lands
couch?
at the couch. Yeah,
Yeah,
at the start. I'm like, yeah, clearly, like that's kind of like the tone, but at the same time, it's trying to keep the same like tone of like seriousness, like what kind of was established in Casino Royale. Even in like the first scene of Casino Royale, it's like this is the serious, gritty take on it. So I feel like that's what the difference was, and
yeah.
yeah.
But here's the thing. I think it's going to be a really big mistake for them to do something like I don't know, like changing the actor to like a female actor. Because the thing is, like, 007 is like associated and synonymous with James Bond, right? I don't think they can come up with like Jamie Bond or something like that. It's not going to come, like, people aren't going to react as well to that. And I think it's a really lazy thing for them to do. I kind of like what they were setting up originally, I think, with Skyfall, where like they had it as if like Moneypenny was going to become
Mm.
like I thought she was going to become like the new, like, a partner. Like, she wasn't going to be like just like an assistant. Like, she was like actually going to be like a spy as well in some capacity. That's kind of like what they set it up, and then they never like followed through with it. I don't know if you got that as well.
I don't remember. It's been a while, but I do remember. Yeah, there was some good setup, I think.
Yeah, but like they didn't end up doing anything with it, so it's a shame. And I do kind of like the reboot. Like Q is like a nerdy dude, as opposed to like an old like scientist doctor guy, which is like, kind of very much like in line with the times of like what we consider to be like smart, like back then versus what it is now. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to see whether the movie's any good. Hopefully they'll release
Yeah,
a trailer soon for it.
hopefully so.
But another franchise that is getting a movie that was announced recently was Matrix 4. And it's set to return with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss, and Lana Wachowski to direct.
Which is like,
So
what?
yeah, I mean, the Wachowski sisters. I have to remember to
They used to be
call.
brothers, and then they
Yeah,
used to be
yeah.
like siblings, and now they're sisters now. So
Well, yeah, no,
gone
it's
full
just like 'cause
circle here.
well, for so long, like, people called them the Wachowski brothers. Like, that's why it's just in my head. But like, yeah, the Wachowski sister. But it's just Lana coming back to direct, and Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. Now, the thing that I didn't um put one to one initially was the fact that Carrie-Anne Moss is the lawyer from Jessica Jones.
What I
I
don't
did
even know how you didn't like see that.
I don't know.
It's
Like, I
like,
guess
man, you got old.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's probably why. Uh, but I mean, but to be honest, it's kind of, I blame Keanu, because Keanu is like a vampire. Dude. Like,
He looks good. He looks like he's never aged.
dude
He's on
still
top of
look,
the goddamn world. This is his year.
yeah. I feel like that's the reason why this movie is getting made, because of purely from the success and of Keanu, right? Like, like what was a stunt double is the guy who like made all the John Wick films.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like, I mean, like, the Matrix kicked off a lot of things, like a lot of like kind of modern action and fighting scenes are kind of like based around like a lot of the things that the Matrix movies introduced. So, I think I think the best, one of the titles I remember hearing like people were throwing around for the new Matrix 4 was like Matrix, like, how it's like Reloaded, Revolution, and then like in Matrix 4 will be like Rebirth. because it's
I
going to be
just call
like
it full on just
return.
what it is, like reboot.
Reboot. Reboot. You
And
know
also, it
what?
works inside the computer world as well, so it's like it makes
It does.
perfect sense.
And it's kind of meta as well if they called it reboot, right? I was saying rebirth sounds pretty cool because, like, if they're having Keanu come back, it's going to be him like coming back alive, right?
Unless he becomes like the architect or something. I don't know if they can do anything.
Well, yeah. I feel like maybe I've either talked about it on this show or I've.
I think we talked about it because I think there was rumors like 2 months ago that was saying they were going to make a Matrix 4 with Michael B. Jordan. I think that was the very early rumors, and I didn't know, and I thought, yeah, no Matrix 4, and then it's happening, so who knows?
Well, I don't know. Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, that's the kind of thing that I wanted it to be like. Oh, like maybe Keanu isn't the main character, but he ends up being like the architect and kind of, proving the whole thing about like the architect in the first movie. Kind of warning Neo about like, he isn't special and he's kind of like, part of like the cycle of being in this program and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to see where that goes. It does also give me an excuse to watch the Matrix movies again.
Yeah, I haven't watched them in a very long time.
I think I've watched the original Matrix a few times, but like Matrix, I like Reloaded more than Revolution. Don't know if you feel.
No, I think majority of people do.
Okay,
like
good.
I think most people like Reloaded, where it's like people mostly think like Reloaded's pretty good. It just has like a few things off with it. Like, and I still feel like it's the same thing with what Revolutions as well, where I'm like, I don't hate them as bad as other people do. I feel like part of it is very much of just like maybe like the behind the scenes things, because I think originally Matrix was supposed to be like just by itself, and kind of leave it off as it is, and then there was like, oh shit, it's successful, we're gonna make a movie like another one. So they got they had to kind of plan out a lot more of the world as it kind of went on almost, and it's like now with the Lana Wachowski, it's good to see, because like that's the thing, I've kind of been a fan of a lot of their work, because like I liked Speed Racer,
Cloud Atlas.
I thought it's a very weird adaptation, because that book is very weird, and I feel like you needed to be in that weird headspace. Same with Sense8, where I'm like, you have a good idea, good premise, didn't execute it to your full vision. I
don't know, man.
Sense8 had a lot of grandiose of like, why the fuck is this in here? Like, you cut these episodes off by like 20 minutes if you just cut off all this necessary stuff.
That was a show that it was like, but there's going to be like a dildo that's like a wet dildo that's like within the first 10 minutes of the show, right? Or something like that.
They have a lot of that where it's just like, where like since they're all connected, they're just like, where's these kind of big orgy scenes? Like, it's like, are you throwing it back to Matrix Reloaded now with the big orgies? Like, you're into orgies or something. Like, there's that, even something like Jupiter Ascending, where I'm like for me, like what I remember with Jupiter Ascending, I'm like, I can see good stuff in this, like good ideas, but the execution was terrible. So I feel like my personal thing is, I feel like maybe someone needs to be there being like, we don't want this, cut this out.
Yeah, like an oversight for it. I agree, especially given that like WB's track record and general like shenanigans with like the later Matrix films. Like, I think I would totally agree. Like, somebody like should definitely be there, like, to kind of be like, oh yeah, hey, maybe not do this instead, and not make it so that they might need to do like reshoots, like later down the line, because I think it was like the Birds of Prey, also known as like the Emancipation of Harley Quinn or whatever, that's having a lot of reshoots being done.
Yeah, but it's done by the action guy of the Matrix guy, the John Wick guy. So I'm like, it's action scenes. But, so I'm like, okay, action scenes.
Yeah, but the thing is, if the movie itself is lacking action, it might feel out of tone with the movie itself, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, hopefully it's integrated well, but like the thing is, like, it's like almost being like, okay, we're gonna get you to make a like a romance movie, right? And like
in the last quarter, I'm gonna throw some hardcore action at your face.
Well, yeah, but like, but let's say like you're trying to do a romance film, but instead you're doing, um, you're doing a horror that doesn't have the romance element, and then you have to get another director to come in and actually put in the romance aspects in it. It's like, okay, now it's like a romance horror film, right? Like it kind of seems like the film that maybe the director was trying to make wasn't supposed to be so action centric, which is fine. Like I think that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
Especially given that like we do want to create more movies that aren't like all one dimensional and predictable, like or like a Marvel cookie cutter film, so to speak. Like but at the same time, like if you're gonna have like all these DC characters and you're gonna have like Huntress, you're gonna have you're not having Batgirl, but you're having like a bunch of other characters that are like known for fighting and having action scenes. If the action scenes are not good, that's pretty worrying.
Yeah.
So hopefully, hopefully, the Birds of Prey movie and Matrix 4 won't need any kind of reshoots. But speaking of other comic book news, I don't know if you've heard about the whole Disney Sony kind of stuff that's happening at the moment.
This little
Crazy,
itty
isn't
bitty
it?
bit of news, like I've never heard about this. It's inconsequential, like a spider almost. But yeah, essentially the big news is that, Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man. They always had. They just basically put Spider-Man on loan, for the MCU to see, how Disney, does with, Spider-Man. And I think the contract was up, and they were kind of like, I think the whole thing is like if Spider-Man Far From Home makes like $1 billion, they get to keep the contract or whatever it may be. Negotiations happened, and Sony's like, yeah, nah, we don't need Disney. We're okay, and they basically parted ways. Now, a lot of the thing that's happening now is like, oh man, stuff you, Sony for doing this because you're like depriving me of my Spider-Man, the MCU, and I'm more like, at least a studio out there, thank God, can say no to Disney. And even then, you get, because not only do they have Fox, which is like, they definitely can't buy out Sony now because there's no way that anyone would allow that. But
Yeah,
when on top of that, Sony, technically they still own it, and I think the whole negotiation was, the way it's kind of explained is like, I think Disney wanted 50% of everything instead of
yeah.
whatever margin
So
they had. So essentially, them
so
giving them out on loan was kind of like it's kind of a trade-off. So they're just like 50-50 for something I earn. It's kind of a bad business deal.
yeah, but the thing is, Marvel initially had 5%, I think, from my understanding, at least from sources from the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, which both reported on both of these kind of interactions, because there was the initial release by Mike Fleming at Deadline. The big thing about this, like he mentioned sources, and from my understanding and from what I looked online, Mike Fleming has like a direct connection to Sony. Because of all the leaks that happened like a while ago. I don't know if you remember like all the email leaks.
Yeah, I do. Where everyone's like, the one email was like, "Why do we hire Adam Sandler? His movies suck." I remember that one.
Oh, I don't. Well, that's something they said. Wow.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
just
I
like,
remember.
we keep on making Adam Sandler movies like Pixels, like all these other
Yeah, yeah,
ones, and they're just like, why do we have him still here? Like, I
yeah.
remember
He
that was
sucks. Yeah,
I remember that was
that's
one.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
I mean, there was all the stuff about like Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters reboot movie, and how like they were saying like, oh, Bill Murray has to go, otherwise he has to be in it, otherwise like they'll sue him or something like that. I remember that was like a point of contention that was like revealed. But yeah, there was like essentially they were saying like, yeah, Mike Fleming has like a direct line and through several emails that like, yeah, like when they have news, they kind of release it through Mike Fleming. So it's very much the case that I think the Deadline article is like very much at least like straight from the source,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So every time they say my sources, it's kind of like they're saying Sony told me, right?
I don't want to
um,
say it officially, but yeah, pretty much this way.
yeah, essentially. But yeah, from my understanding, like it's Marvel has like a 5% stake at the moment in Spider-Man, whereas like in the creation of the movie, right?
Hmm.
And whereas the other 95% is taken by Sony itself, and they wanted to increase that to 50%. So, in a way that's kind of good in a sense, 50-50, Marvel has to therefore, and Disney has to therefore cop out more for the creation of this film and stuff like that. I think the only problem here is, Sony knows how much money it costs to make a Spider-Man movie, and they're clearly willing to fork out the money to create it. I mean, they already did. Under the only, I think the other thing is, Disney owns the merchandising rights to Spider-Man as
Yes,
well.
which is,
So I
by the
think
way, a pretty big deal, I would say, because
really big deal.
the whole
Really big
point with
deal.
the X-Men is just it's kind of been the role reverse where Fox had the whole time had basically Fox had the whole time the movie rights, but they never had the merchandising rights. So that's why you never saw basically X-Men toys, and in a way you didn't really see them as often or as prominent as you would see Iron Man or Captain America, because they just completely
Yeah, and
refused to do that.
and subsequently the reason why Marvel kind of cut down on their stories involving the X-Men universe, it was basically something that didn't really, it was there in the background, but it wasn't something that it was like a 90s sensation or a 2000s sensation as it used to be. There was definitely an attempt to cut down the kind of new content for X-Men, because any new content that they release basically becomes more stories for the Fox people to therefore use for their movies, right? So why make new material for our enemies to keep using the very property that we want back, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
hence why they shelved it, and hence why they tried to replace it semi. I think it was under Ike Perlmutter. I think that was the guy who was kind of overlooking Marvel at the time. And they wanted to try and get Inhumans in there instead, but that didn't work. They was the Avengers versus Inhumans, or all these kind of shenanigans.
The whole barrage of
Going,
things. But yeah,
yeah,
essentially going back to the whole that whole thing. It's my whole thing is I'm glad that at least Sony can be hey, look, Marvel, Disney, you did a good job. We'll see if we can either keep the same characters, surprisingly we have a hit with Venom, which is getting a sequel, which has
God.
Andy Serkis and everything like that. And but my whole thing is just I feel like the I feel like it has to be, they have to have some sort of Kevin Feige on board, and I feel because I did watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Kevin Feige had no input whatsoever. Disney, Marvel had no input, and that is one of the best films that came out last year. You even comic book type of comic book thing. So it's you almost need the Phil Lord and Chris Miller almost to even helm the Spider-Verse. Even they can do that, because I feel like Spider-Man basically is the character very much close to Batman in the sense of he has a good rogues gallery and he can stand up on his own. And I feel like some of the criticisms, especially what I've seen now in the forefront, is that I sometimes kind of saw it where it's the Spider-Man in the MCU was more Iron Man Jr., and people did want to see Spider-Man being a normal teenager rather than just being someone who gets all these special privileges just handed over to him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why it's very different. I'm people can see the Spider-Man that they want to see that doesn't have to be connected to a major universe. And even then, if you're thinking about the MCU in total, he doesn't really have that much of a connection to anyone else aside from Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Everyone
I
else was
mean,
just characters that just said hi. But it's something in Far From Home, he wanted to get away from
all that kind of
all of
stuff.
Shield
Yeah.
and everything. So it's almost like he wants to be by himself.
I don't know. I think my kind of issue is that the the kind of base that Sony's kind of built with Venom is horrible. And I think it's a big mistake to make a Venom 2. I think that it's probably gonna do okay, let's face it. I mean, people are gonna go watch bad movies. I can't stop them, but I think tonally it doesn't match, and also the histories don't match as well. I think they'd be much better off doing a Venom reboot and just doing it or this is All right, think about this, right? Let's say, like, they did the tease with, I think it's not Eddie Brock, but whoever the
Rage,
Carnage guy
the
is.
guy, yeah, okay,
The
Rage
Car-
kind of
no, no, no,
Woody
no, no. I'm talking about
Harrelson.
Carnage. Well, yeah, Woody Harrelson character. I forget the actual comic book character, but like, that guy, he becomes Carnage, right? What if it's all just a big misdirection into you thinking that, okay, Venom's gonna, because the whole thing with creation of Carnage is that basically, like, Venom, he's a symbiote, and like, they I think they undergo mitosis, and that's how they reproduce, right? And so he splits off and like splits makes like a baby, in a sense, like a baby symbiote thing. But they kind of retconned like the origin of, like, all the symbiotes and stuff like that, but like this new one is like even more crazier and is kind of like the equivalent to like the Joker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he forms like Carnage. What if Woody Harrelson is just like a misdirection, and the Carnage symbiote actually goes on Spider-Man instead, and that's how you get the Spider-Man symbiote suit, right? That sounds like a far more interesting story than what they currently have going on with, like, Woody Harrelson and I don't know what we're doing. If they end up like not having like if they end up not getting back to the MCU, that sounds like a good direction, because again, it's kind of twisting the original, because they can't do the Peter Parker Venom symbiote suit origin. Let's twist it a little bit and have it be it's actually the Spider-Man Carnage symbiote instead. It kind of keeps it a little fresh, but it's kind of the same. Given what we have left, I think that seems like a good compromise that they could come up with, but they probably won't do it.
Yeah.
But
Well, who knows? They could
Sony,
even just reboot the whole thing, because I think, like, obviously Tom
I
Holland's
think that's the
contract is
best.
signed with Sony, but like I feel like most of the time there is a clause where it's like you pay X amount of money to exit. But like, who knows? Like, who knows what's going on? It might be like an agency thing where his agent's like trying to negotiate something, or like, I feel like they could reboot Spider-Man, because like I feel like in the end, like,
Oh,
if
no, 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 no,
let's
no!
do it for a
Don't
fourth time, everyone. But like,
no way, they can't reboot Spider.
or like,
No
but my
fucking
whole
way.
hope is like they finally open up the Spider-Verse in real, like, live action, where like
Mhm.
you could do a Spider-Gwen. Obviously a lot of people wanted Miles Morales, and he could, like,
I think
I feel like the easiest way to do it, if Tom Holland's pissed off, they can just be like, look, you don't have to be Spider-Man anymore. Like, you just have to do it for one more time, and then Miles Morales could be the new Spider-Man, and
new
you're
Spider-Man.
free.
Yeah, it's a
And
good tactic.
he'll be like, yeah, okay, fine. So like, I feel like there is a possible way of connecting all of these together in such a way, because like I feel like almost like the MCU kind of detracted from Spider-Man. Like, like, like Tom Holland's a good Spider-Man. It's just maybe the stories like that you didn't get the humble Spider-Man, New York City
But I think
vibe.
that's fine because we've already had those movies, right? It's like, once again, like doing a Batman origin again. Like, it's not going to be as fun like the sixth or seventh time. It's like, it's just like a twist of the original formula. I think it's fine the way it is. I just don't trust, like, Sony Spider-Man is one thing, but like under, like, um, I'm pretty sure the same people who are overlooking like Venom and Spider-Man and stuff also made the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And subsequently, the only reason, Homecoming and Far From Home are as good as they are is because of Marvel's oversight. I think it's definitely overestimating Sony's ability to do well without that particular kind of team working behind it. Because again, Venom is an awful movie. The Amazing Spider-Man movies were awful movies. Yeah, okay, sure, like, a Spider-Verse was a good movie, but I think it's definitely a completely different story
Mm.
when we're talking
Well,
about
that's why I'm
animation and the
saying that,
team
like,
and the
oh,
creative team behind
yeah,
it.
that's why I'm kind of saying almost of like they need someone who is kind of in that creative
Yeah, but
mindset to kind of like be leading almost. So it's like,
yeah,
if
but I don't think
it
I think like they're getting a new. I think the director isn't even the same, so that's already like what one bad mark on like a movie when the original director doesn't come back to direct the sequel,
ooh,
right?
I got an idea of exactly who they need to do.
Yeah,
You know who
okay.
they need to cast?
Who?
And
Who?
I would be like, I would actually be pretty happy.
Cast as who?
No, the director,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Zack
Who?
Snyder.
Zack
Yes,
Snyder.
yes, gritty
Well,
Spider-Man, but
well, I
not
mean,
emo.
I hate to break it to you because there is already a director, Andy Serkis.
I know, no, but that's for Venom too. But
Yeah,
for
for Venom 2.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
saying if there's a new Spider-Man film with Spider-Man,
Uh,
let's go,
yeah.
Zach. Let's go.
I don't know. Look, I don't have a lot. Personally, I think this is just a negotiating tactic, right? Like Sony's going to make a big huff about it, and then people are going to be mad at Sony, people are going to be mad at Marvel, and then maybe there's going to be a compromise. When you go into a business deal, or when you just try and haggle with, right? You always kind of offer a higher price than you actually want, and then you kind of go to something costs $100, you say, oh, I'll pay you 40, like, all right, 60, deal. You kind of meet in the middle, somehow, right? And I think it's going to be the same here. Like if they're just going to have to beat back the mouth a little bit, and be like, hey, like, maybe we'll give you like 20%.
That's
I
the thing.
think the
It's
thing
like
is,
because like yeah, 5 to 50 is a very big margin. But even
oh,
even with that to be being said, is that like
it's 10
phase,
times,
but not only that, but like Phase 4 Marvel, I'd say is pretty lackluster, and it's like, and I feel like they kind of wanted Spider-Man to kind of be in the like going
Ooh,
forward after maybe Phase 4, like Phase 5, it'd be like something like Spider-Man, Black
how
Panther,
cool
you
how
know.
cool would a Spider-Man Disney Plus TV series? That would be dope.
Well, but and I feel like that's my theory. What they're going to do with the X-Men, since they don't want to do any more
Ah,
X-Men movies anymore.
they're
It
gonna do
seems to be
TV
semi-toxic.
series.
They're just going to make it into a TV series. I feel like that's probably the best option for the X-Men. I
I
feel
think they'll
like
probably have. I think they'll probably have one movie, to introduce them, and then maybe they'll have like individual movies where they'll do team ups and
because it'll
stuff.
be like the
Like I
X-Men,
can see that
yeah, it'll
happen.
be like the X-Men
I
animated series, just live action. So it's like, yeah, do that.
Yeah, but I mean they make more money off like big production movies anyway. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how they do it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes forward. But on a side note, I want to actually link the whole struggle with like ownership of property rights to something else, which is Star Trek and Star Wars. Right now, I recently watched a really good video by a YouTube channel, The Midnight's Edge. So highly recommend people, if you're listening to the podcast, go check them out. They do some pretty cool stuff. But like I was recommended this video, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a watch. Usually, I'm not like a big like, ooh, I'll watch like a recommended video
Hmm.
on YouTube, right? But this one like kind of caught my attention because like it kind of talked about a little bit about Star Trek. The specific kind of video I'm referring to, I believe it's called like like a Star Trek, like misconstrue or something like that. But essentially, the first thing I want to get to is, what have you watched the old kind of Star Trek film, TV series?
I've watched. Probably seen it in glancing.
Yeah,
At a
or
glance.
like
I've
the
never
odd
really like
episode here and there.
yeah, where I've never really been like, oh man, like I know everything about these characters. So pretty much no.
Yeah, yeah. I started watching the original series like kind of semi recently, or I mean last year, but I haven't finished it. I'm still kind of powering through it. And I used to watch like the old next gen episodes like when I was younger, when it was like on TV and syndication, like here in Australia, and I really liked the show. And the one big thing um, that I want to bring a lot of attention to is the fact that the rights of the Star Trek series was actually split apart due to like corporate like you know you know corporations splitting in two,
Hmm.
essentially, right? Because the thing is, I think Viacom was the original company. Viacom was split into Paramount and CBS, right? And the thing is, CBS ended up with the rights of Star Trek. The thing is, they didn't want to actually do anything with the Star Trek property, they just wanted to collect all the kind of merchandise revenue because it was like, oh, sweet, like we're gonna get all this cool like merch, and we
Star
don't
Trek
even have to
money.
do anything about it. Yeah, exactly, right. Meanwhile, I think from my understanding, Paramount actually wanted to do something with Star Trek, especially given that they didn't have a lot of big properties on their hand, and so there was a negotiation done in which uh, CBS allowed Paramount to make a new Star Trek series. The only difference is that they had to actually change around like I think by change it by like 25%, right? Because and you can kind of see that with like the reboot movies, which the first movie I really like. Second movie, Wrath of Khan or whatever not Wrath of Khan or whatever, but
Into Darkness, which is
Into
basically Wrath of
Darkness,
Khan, but like
Wrath of Khan.
somewhat reversed. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, it's a bad film. And then
Into Darkness, which I thought it was okay. Like it's just standard.
is
It doesn't do anything
is that the third
interesting.
one?
Yeah.
Is that the third one? Yeah, yeah, the third one's good.
Beyond. No, it's
I
Star
think the
Trek
third,
Beyond. Beyond.
Beyond, yeah, Beyond seemed like a TV episode that like seemed movie length, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But one of the things that you can kind of see that were like changes was, for example, like the uniform that they wore, it had like a metal badge and it had like the Delta symbols like stitched into the actual uniform itself. Like that was an example of like a change they had to make because if they kept like the original plain yellow outfit, any merchandise that Paramount would make, um, that would go to CBS, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I don't know if you know like what tribbles are. Those are
Yeah,
those like
the fluffy
very
things, whatever the hell they are. Yeah.
yeah, because the tribbles like didn't change in like the Star Trek movie when there was like the merchandise for it. All the merchandise money went straight to CBS and not to Paramount, right? So they didn't make any money off any tribbles, right, for that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So and so subsequently there was like a move to kind of like change things up because the thing is every time they try and use like things from and they also introduce this in the films as well, like they talk about like the Prime universe and the Kelvin universe, right?
Yeah, essentially the split happened when yeah, the first Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because of all then coming into their world and changes up a lot of the timelines. Now, the thing that kind of happened is they tried to introduce like a lot of like new concepts, and you can kind of see it in the movies, like there's new aliens, new characters, and stuff like that, right? And the thing is, and I'll kind of relate this into um, the new series Star Trek Discovery, right? Now, I think we can both say that like it's not that great, the Star Trek Discovery TV series. I like season 2 more than season 1, and that's purely because of I think it's Anson Mount who plays Pike in the show. I think he's just like and Spock. I think both of those
I feel
characters
like they're a much better replacement. I feel like.
yeah, exactly. And I think like anytime they're on the screen, like it actually like ups the show significantly because they do such a good job at like emulating the characters that they're based off, and they definitely have like a huge presence every time they're on the show. So kudos to the showrunners for nailing those characters, but the rest of the show isn't that great. But the big thing is, they kind of promoted Star Trek Discovery as being a show that was based in the Prime universe, right? It's kind of during the like the Klingon Wars and all that kind of stuff. Star Trek fans, like if I get like stuff wrong, I don't know everything. I've only just watched like kind of the first 2 series, so
I kind of feel
please forgive
bad
me.
for just the OG Star Trek fans.
Star Trek.
Because the hardcore people just like I don't know, I don't even know what they feel like about the new Star Trek in the movies, and like even like
Okay.
looking at something like Orville, for example, which we both really like.
Yeah, great show. But hold on. It gets even. You'll see the kind of the chess game that's being played here. This six dimensional water polo game that's being.
It's all about the business deals.
Yeah. Because it'll make a lot more sense, as I keep explaining it. But, with the, with Star Trek Discovery, one of the things that people, kind of, realized is, hey, this is supposed to be set in the Prime universe. Like, why is the Enterprise like, you know, like 3 times bigger than the original Enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense. I think, and this was the case, I think, uh, with the Enterprise in the Star Trek movies as well. It's like, those movies are set in the Kelvin universe. Like this TV series, they said is set in the Prime universe. Like, shouldn't like all this shouldn't this be like the same size? Shouldn't it be 3 times smaller? Shouldn't, like, you look at like the uniforms, like, the uniforms like look different as well. Yeah, and we kind of see, there's obviously they kind of come back with uniforms here and there, but you can also see that the uniform that Anson Mount wears, like, is kind of more akin to the uniforms that you see in the movies as well. So you're thinking, oh, so maybe it's set in the Kelvin universe. No, no, no. It's set in the Prime universe. Um, but the thing is, right, and also this is kind of the big thing that took me a while to kind of wrap around my head, like when it was initially explained.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the Kelvin universe and the Prime universe, right, are concepts that were introduced in the movies that are technically non-canon to the original series, like all from, like, Deep Space Nine, all that.
Yeah.
So even the concept of Prime universe isn't canon to the Star Trek universe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why they can get around with making, like, because they're kind of forced to make the Star Trek, the Enterprise 3 times bigger, because contractually, alongside with CBS, CBS has said, like, you have to make it 25% different, right? So they have to make it bigger. But they show the show as being, oh no, it's set in the Prime universe, but the Prime universe is a non-canon concept. So anything that actually happens in Star Trek Discovery is technically non-canon and does not actually have any relationship with the original series, Deep Space Nine, Next Gen, all that. Doesn't have
Yeah.
any connection.
So basically, from 2009 onwards, this is in its own separate universe.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, it's not presented like, the movies and stuff. They're presented as an alternate timeline. Discovery, on the other hand, isn't. It's kind of framed as, oh no, it's in the Prime universe, right? The Prime universe is where it's set in. And I think that's also the reason why, like, they do a lot of changes, such as, like, they make Giorgio as, like, the Empress in, like, the I think the dark alternate universe kind of thing. Like, that's all that I'm pretty sure wasn't in the original series, and subsequently, like, that's something that's original to that. But because the Prime timeline, the whole concept of a Prime timeline isn't in the original series, it's a completely non-canon concept. But this allows them to make things in the Star Trek universe while not having to pay merchandise and revenue and all that kind of stuff to CBS, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this one big kind of loopy, like, tactic that's done in order to get around the whole having to pay for things. Now, and this is the reason why they're not using, like, a lot of the aliens. They're trying to introduce, like, new aliens. They're trying to introduce, like, all these new characters and stuff like that. Because if they put in, like, old characters and too much of the old alien, even the Klingons look different from the original Klingons, right?
Yeah.
If they make them too similar, again, all that kind of merchandise and revenue goes to CBS. So this has all been done, and it's kind of been in the comics as well, where they're kind of introducing the concept of, oh, like, there are multiverses, and, oh, all these multiverses are canon to Star Trek, because again, they have to kind of make it this way if they want to kind of get that revenue share and get the maximum profit from from the movies and the new series they're making. Especially, they're going to be the new. I think there's the new kind of there's another Star Trek series that's coming out
Yeah,
as
there's the
well.
Picard one, which
The Picard one,
that's
yeah.
gonna throw a wrench in the whole timeline thing, because that's
Uh,
actually got Patrick Stewart back.
now, but here's the thing: it doesn't, because again, anything that isn't that they're making isn't actually canon. Like, so when they talk about, like, Kelvin and Prime timeline, those things don't even exist. The only things that matter is whether it's canon to the original series that came out, like, back in the 90s and etc., or the non-canon stuff, which is everything that's like from the new Star Trek J.J. Abrams film onward,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of kind of I do highly recommend you guys checking out the channel. I think Midnight's Edge. Have a see, because they've done a really good job at kind of compiling all that kind of info in regards to it. But the thing is, like, with that being said, the the reason why I'm kind of relating this to Star Wars is because after, I think, Star Trek Beyond, apparently J.J. Abrams went to CBS and told them to stop selling Star Trek merchandise from the original series, and they have been, and from what I understand, they said fuck off. And this subsequently led to him leaving the Star Trek franchise. And where did he go next?
I don't know about that. The other sci-fi fantasy show.
Yeah. He went straight to Star Wars. Now, what's the big thing that's kind of been happening in Star Wars that's been pissing off a lot of people?
Yeah.
I'm gonna toss it up to you, Don. What do you think? Like one of the big things that has happened that people don't like.
I think obviously the main one is the whole thing of getting rid of the old legacy, putting in the new legacy characters. And I think I know exactly where you're coming from, because I think there was a news report about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, regarding George Lucas semi has still rights when it says if you use people like Luke, Leia, Han, Darth Vader, I get a certain amount of cut in the film, or whatever it was. Is it something like that?
Oh, I actually don't know if that's true.
Because I heard a rumor about last week where it says every time you use Darth Vader in whatever it may be, I get a cut. Which I thought George Lucas didn't have any attachment whatsoever, but maybe he kept residuals, and that would explain maybe why you don't see, like, obviously they're going to kill off Han, because I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford didn't want to come back unless he died. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole Luke thing, it kind of explains a lot. So there's like there were rumors about that, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any kind of explicit, because I haven't seen this particular news source. But the thing is, I don't think you're necessarily wrong, because I think the rumor is that this is exactly the case, right? That while, like, Disney owns, like, the rights to Star Wars and doing stuff with it, the Lucas estate still earns money from using, as you said, like characters like Han, Leia, Vader, Luke, etc, C-3PO, R2-D2, probably as well, Chewbacca. Maybe not Chewbacca, because we still see Chewbacca around, right? Maybe he'll die next film, I don't know. But yeah, it's very interesting to see that they kind of are doing the same thing with the Star Wars series, and it makes more sense, because if J.J. Abrams, he wants the piece of the pie, right? And he wants to introduce characters and aliens and people that Bad Robot and Disney own the rights, so they get, like, maximize the profits off them. We're not going to use Ewoks anymore. We're going to use Porgs. We're not going to use R2-D2 anymore. We're going to use BB-8, and have BB-8 be like the new R2-D2, who's everywhere and is in every story and stuff like that. Like it's gonna I'm gonna review Star Wars Resistance in a second, and BB-8's all over that.
Yeah, it's definitely... so yeah, I can definitely see where this all comes from now, in a sense of just like maybe they wanted to change a lot of things just for the sole purpose of just like not paying rights, or like money, money funneling.
I mean, it sounds definitely like something Disney would be interested in doing, because again, they're gonna get as much money as they can from people who want to watch these films. The problem is nobody cares about any of the new characters. Rey's bad. Look, I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. She's a Mary Sue, and they really fucked up her development.
Well, not even that, but like even something like Galaxy's Edge, for what I've heard of the Disneyland theme park. The Star Wars one,
I've heard about.
Nothing like there's no Luke, no Leia. There's no as far as I know, there's no like something like a Boba Fett or something like that. It's very like it's all the new movies, all the stuff that people don't really like.
apparently even the Cantina doesn't play the original Cantina music,
Mm. So I
which
think
I kind of
so. I
found
feel like
really.
almost like maybe Lucas still, in a sense, is just like you cannot stuff like if you do all my original stuff that people created, I make money out of, and I feel
Yeah.
like that instead of maybe putting in just for the sake of the story, they're just like, no, we're gonna fuck it up and
No, we're gonna. Yeah.
completely redo
Which
it all.
again, I mean, it is weird given that when you go to like a Disney World or something like that, like, or Disney has like their whole Marvel section as well. Like, they're not gonna have somebody who dresses up as Spider-Man. Obviously, they own the Spider-Man, right? So they can have somebody dress up as him or as Iron Man, Hulk, whatever. But like, yeah, you're going to a Star Wars and what you're gonna see Rey and Kylo Ren, who nobody cares about. Again,
Which to be fair, he's probably the only good character out of the new
and
movies.
that's
Yeah.
not saying much. He's only good when he has that helmet on, which is why it's being reforged, and it's going to be in episode 9, right? That's the only reason
Which,
it's
by the way, Star Wars comes out in like 4 months, and no one gives a shit.
yeah, because they've lost any and all good face that they had with the audience, and I think there's like all the stuff that you were saying about Galaxy Edge, like potentially like it's not being booked and people don't want to go, and oh, there's all this stuff about like kids aren't as interested in Star Wars anymore, and Disney and everyone's gonna be like, oh, that's the reason why Star Wars is doing bad because oh, kids don't like Star Wars, but it's like it's your fault kids don't like Star Wars, right? Like everything kind of comes like top down, right? Like you have the adults who like Star Wars, and then like they have kids or they have like people that they interact with, and the kids think kids look up to adults, and if the adults think that Star Wars is cool, they'll think it's
Yeah, because like even my
that's
like
functionally how it works.
the way I got brought up is like I watched Star Wars and Indiana Jones basically, and that's those two franchises are pretty much my favorites in a way. Where it's like and I feel like a lot of people do it, but it's like the new stuff isn't as impactful because they're not as good
Well,
movies. They're not good
yeah,
movies. Well, it's like
yeah,
you could say
yeah,
Episode 4 is pretty so, but like Episode 5 is a great movie, or like I'm a really big sucker for the Indiana Jones films, and they've really everyone keeps on forgetting the first Indiana Jones was nominated for best picture when the first movie when it came out. So it's like these movies I do like them. They're all directed by Steven Spielberg. So like like a lot of these things do have the gravitas, and I feel like the new I guess Star Wars doesn't have that same impact or feel where it's not the best of its genre anymore.
yeah, and it's a shame because I think there is definitely a vacuum that's left open for also sci-fi TV series. We mentioned before about like kind of medieval fantasy. There's a with Game of Thrones, and now like there's one left open for this as well. And I think this is the reason why like shows like The Expanse and I like the Orville, because these shows are basically filling my kind of my my eyeballs with eye candy, sci-fi eye candy that I need. But yeah, it's a shame, but yeah, I hope you kind of got I hope it wasn't too long-winded. Sorry guys if I kind of went too long about Star Trek, but I think it's quite fundamental to kind of understand like the history behind what's happening with Star Trek at the moment is kind of like a reflection of what's happening with Star Wars as well. However, a final note that I'll just put with Star Trek, there's a little bit of good news because as of recently, because all this news is like kind of a little bit out of date, because as of recently there was talks of CBS and Paramount actually kind of combining back together again, which would mean that they wouldn't have to do this whole weird prime, prime Kelvin universe switcheroo concept, non-canon canon concept. Like now they can just make the ships as big as they need to, hopefully. But yeah, I don't know. I think I I, I kind of think that Discovery is probably going to get cancelled.
Yeah, well, maybe because like
Season
from
3.
my knowledge of like Star Trek TV shows, like a lot of them, the first like 2 seasons get really rocky, and then they get better over time, as far as I know. But
It's usually the first season that's rocky.
yeah,
And
because
then
like
it
because
gets
because
better.
yeah, I don't know, because I've heard stories about like Star Trek Discovery and what Brian Fuller, like and like the showrunners of the Star Trek shows, they're like basically always been in hot water, and it's just like like I even like saw something about like Doctor Who. Like I have no connection to Doctor Who. I've never really been a fan, but people just saying, yeah, the new showrunner sucks. Because
Right.
there's like the way they frame things, and maybe it's kind of like the same thing almost. So it's like I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it
could
does
be.
get cancelled. CBS, they have their all access channel thing or whatever. So, and I feel like Star Trek as a brand has suffered over the past few years, and I feel like maybe the original Star Trek fans or whoever it may be, they want to do something with it interesting
Yeah,
or like
I think the thing is like it's kind of a big deal, and yeah, again, like I would recommend going to I'm really hamming it out, but go watch the Midnight's Edge videos about it because they're quite insightful and how they kind of break down all the kind of negotiation. They talk about a lot of like the people who are involved in like the executive side of things and how like, oh, they didn't want the merger, and yeah, there's all this kind of other kind of stuff. Again, like it probably explains like 95% of all kind of issues when we can't have certain films is because, oh, they don't have the right, or they don't have syndication, blah 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 blah. This is why we can't have nice things, so to speak.
yeah,
Um,
well, pretty much. But yeah,
well, actually, just to kind of mention another thing regarding Star Wars, there's also rumors of the Kenobi live action series coming out on Disney Plus, and talks with Ewan McGregor to come back to reprise his role. I hope that's the case. I think it's going to be a really big missed opportunity / mistake if they don't get him back to play the role.
yeah, absolutely. Because I think like most people like the old cast is kind of obviously they're tied up in the movies, and they're pretty much dead at this point, even in real life. Carrie Fisher, but with the prequels, I feel like almost there has been a kind of turn away where it's like the sequels have been pretty bad, and the prequels aren't as bad. Just for the sole purpose of it still has the vision and feel of Star Wars.
Yeah, it still feels like Star Wars. I completely agree.
So I feel like people have you see someone like Ewan McGregor, I think he did a really good job as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Excellent job.
Like Anakin Skywalker. I think it's just more of the script, but I feel like he tried his best with the thing. But I feel like a lot of the Star Wars audience is more happy to see these characters and these people nowadays than what they were before. So essentially Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor, he's a little bit older, and it would make sense for him to kind of maybe have like Jedi Adventures as a TV show, and that would be very interesting, especially if they do it in like a high quality type format. Now, the possibility of this being like officially announced will be like I'd say very soon, because I think Disney has their expo D23, and now I know that Star Wars Celebration, they have their own Star Wars event that's already passed, but there is a possibility that they will bring a trailer to it, or like announcement, because D23 is coming up soon, and one of the other rumors is like the Mandalorian will finally get its like full reveal trailer.
Yep, that's
so
true.
they'll probably do something there, and
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll do something subtle, like what they kind of did with like the subtle reveals of like the what is it, the Winter Soldier and Falcon TV series, right? They'll like show the Disney Plus, and like in the corner you'll see like Ian McGregor's face, and it'll be like, hey, look, it's the Kenobi TV series. Or they could even do something like that, and that'd be enough to get people excited. But yeah, the D23 is also the reason why I think that the whole Disney Sony kind of song and dance that's happening is like, it's like a power play by like Sony, because they know that Disney kind of needs like good news to kind of present, and I'm pretty sure they've already like built like a lot of stuff for their parks, and to have like Spider-Man in it, and the kind of the road work with the MCU to have Spider-Man in it. So I think ultimately it will kind of go in Sony's favor, but who knows? We'll see how much pressure the mouse can put. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Kenobi series, if they actually do manage to get McGregor in, because
I don't want another character. I want Ewan McGregor to do it. And like he's busy. He's playing Black Mask in Birds of Prey, but I feel like after that he can just be like, just be on something. You know,
Yeah.
he's no stranger to
Well,
TV shows. So I
I'm
think he was in the Fargo TV show,
Yeah, I
that
think
first
they've
season.
done all the filming for the Birds of Prey TV movies. I think you can definitely go straight to doing filming for it if you wanted to. I think
If you follow his Instagram and he's like, yeah, man, I'm getting built. I'm like, why are you getting built, man? Why are you getting built?
yeah,
There's gonna be a
suspicious.
reason.
You see, my thing is the timeline that they're going to pick because it obviously has to be post episode
Between 3 and 4, it's
3 and 4
it's always in that murky period. Haven't you
murky
noticed?
territory.
It's either
Yeah,
before
it has to be
it's either like 6 to 7 or 3 and 4. It
three
seems
and
like
four.
extended universe stuff, whether it be like Battlefront or like the new Star Wars, the Fallen Order. It's between that
Hmm.
period. It feels like it's
Yeah,
never between like episodes, but yeah, it seems to be
yeah.
like
I think
that's enough movement to move around.
exactly, and I think you can kind of do some stories like maybe world from Tatooine and he can't stick around and take care of Luke and stuff. So it'd be maybe there's like a big mission in regards to that. I don't know. It gives him an excuse to maybe have Darth Vader in it for a little bit. Who knows? Anything's possible to kind of with this Kenobi series. I hope it's good, especially given that like we're gonna get more Kenobi hopefully because they're gonna be the Star Wars Clone Wars season like 11 or 12 whatever that's based on like
It's coming
the
back.
Mandalorian War or whatever it is. Like that's going to be pretty awesome as well, and I'm looking forward to it.
And also the meme templates, because I don't know if you follow the Star Wars the meme pages, but like everyone's like, wait a second, there's gonna be a new like Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show. That means there's more like reasons to make more memes, because the main meme is hello there as a meme.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so now it's
Well,
like,
well,
yes,
well, well, yeah. I guess like there is that. But yeah. Well, actually, speaking of
memes.
speaking of the kind of Clone Wars TV series, which I actually really really love, but and I've watched Star Wars Rebels as well. And I don't know if have you watched you've watched both of those series,
I've watched Clone
right?
Wars and Rebels. Yeah.
Yeah. I also recently because it totally fell off my radar that this show actually existed, and I mean that kind of goes to show given my review of it. But Star Wars Resistance came out and is set after the events of episode. Well, actually, it's kind of in between episode 6 and 7. Like it kind of transitions to episode 7, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, essentially, like there is like a big event that happens in episode 7 that has ramifications in the show itself, which is kind of cool. I kind of wish like more shows kind of did that. It kind of gives weight to the world a little bit, like kind of like when I think in Star Wars Rebels, when I think Aaron and his master like come face to face with Darth Vader, and it's, ooh, cool, like Darth Vader. That's sweet. Like that actually has like gives a lot of weight to like the world itself and stuff like.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so Star Wars Resistance, it's set around, as I mentioned, it's set around. I think his name is Kazuda, but they call him
Kazuda.
Kaz. Yeah, Kazuda Ziono. But they just call him Kaz in the show, and essentially he's like a he's from the New Republic. So if you've watched episode 7, you can kind of guess what happens to his family,
Uh huh.
and yeah, like he kind of meets Poe Dameron and wants to join the First Order. He gets saved by Poe Dameron, and he wants to kind of join the resistance against the First Order, which is kind of like in the movies they kind of it's really weird. I still don't get the whole First Order thing. Like they're supposed to be the remnants of the Empire, but they've got all this funding to do all this crazy shit and all this power. Like it's really poorly explained in the movie. I know it's explained in the book because like um I think basically all the funding comes from what's his face old alien guy who dies in
Palpatine.
episode 8. Not Palpatine, the other guy.
Um,
Um,
the guy
you
that
see, that dies.
Snoke. Yeah.
Snoke, yeah, Snoke. Like Snoke is basically the guy bank, but like they don't really explain that. Anyways, yeah. So there's yeah, he kind of decides is given a mission by Poe. Again, Poe Dameron is them kind of like putting like, hey, look, here's a new guy who's basically Han Solo. Han Solo-ish, like yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like, hey, go to this outpost. It's like a place where everybody like kind of races and wants to become like the best like racing pilot and stuff. Like it's kind of like doing the whole pod racing thing. And Kaz, he's like works for the New Republic, and he's really good at like flying ships. So he's like, okay, cool, I'll like come here and I'll like spy for the Resistance, because apparently there's some First Order activity happening. Yeah, like I think the premise of the show, like is kind of interesting. I think the problem is like because they're set on, on this kind of like massive ship. Um, it's kind of limited to things happening only on the ship, and it gets kind of repetitive and like there's not a lot of new stuff. It's all just kind of variations of the same thing, and it all is kind of like leading up to like the second season, which by the way is the final season. So you already know that this show did so bad that they canceled it after 2 seasons, because I think even Rebels went on for
Like 4, 5.
four, yeah,
Yes.
4, yeah, I think 4 seasons. So like that's kind of that's pretty that's pretty bad to say the least. Like again, like not to like some aspects of it is good. I feel like the Kaz character, he's like far like more like interesting character than I think Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron.
But
Like Aaron at the
my
beginning
okay.
of the
Yeah. My real question is this more
yeah.
framed as a kids show, or more like kind of like where does it fit? Because like the original Clone Wars was kind of like originally like a kids show, and then it kind of moved on to be
To
more
being
like
more
mature.
adult.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's still more kid centric, because I think the thing is like it becomes more apparent, like I think like because I'm an adult, like being an adult, like you can kind of pick up and watching like all the kind of Star Wars stuff, like there is definitely like a bigger emphasis of like killing someone off screen. Like they don't kill people really, right? Like in Star Wars, when it kind of initially starts, like, oh, like we're going to use like the paralyzing circle beam thing, and oh like one of the stormtroopers fell off the platform into the ocean, because essentially this kind of like um this area, this like new port or whatever, is like a mobile port, and it's in this water, and it's kind of said at the beginning of this series that like, yeah, if you fall into the water, you're more than likely not coming back out, because some kind of sea creature is going to eat you up. So like, yeah, like you're kind of getting that like stormtroopers die, but like there's a lot of instance where, yeah, like you're having the whole, oh, stormtroopers can't shoot anything for shit, because problem where like these people are supposed to be trained and be able to shoot things, but they only seem to shoot things that either can't really die, like droids, or miss living characters completely. And I think that kind of ruins it for me, and that's how I know it's like kid centric. Like they'll have the planes with like the lasers firing at them, but nobody will actually necessarily die getting hit by those lasers, or like ship gets hit and there's an explosion, but oh well, who knows? You don't see any blood, you don't see any, not that I want to really see someone's
It's like I just want to.
explosive bloody
Everyone
corpse.
forgets. Everyone forgets. Episode 4. The cantina. The guy gets his arm cut off, and it's pretty gruesome. Just saying.
Yeah, well, there's that, but it's like that's not necessarily everything that Star Wars is about. It's just a shame that like it does kind of, it doesn't get to have a lot of its creative flair, because it's kind of stuck to keeping in line with what the new set of movies are. And I think that's a big problem. Like, and I think obviously clearly Disney didn't have the confidence for this show to kind of continue post season 2. Hence why the promotion for season 2 literally says like find out the conclusion for Star Wars Resistance. They weren't even like trying to hide the fact that this is a final season. Like they're using it as a point to try and get people to watch it, because it's the final season, if that makes sense. And apparently the second season is going to be set like like leading to the Rise of the Skywalker movie. So I guess like that's something to keep in watch if you care about the new Star Wars movies. I don't, but like maybe if I've got a few couple of minutes, I'll bear it and watch it. But yeah, like Star Wars Resistance isn't as uh, isn't as good as the previous Star Wars animated series, especially given that Star Wars the Clone Wars. Wait, is it Clone Wars or the Clone Wars? One's the 2D animated, one's
I
the
think that
3D
Clone
animated.
Wars is
The 2D animated?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something
It's the
confusing
Samurai
like that.
Jack guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Both series are great, by the way. Definitely should watch both of those. And also given that like the CGI TV series like kind of for the Clone Wars kind of give a lot of insight in regards to what happens in between episode 2 and 3.
Because there was
I think
a big jump, and it's like,
a
whoa, what's
big
going on here?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like because I do a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons. Like I wanted to set a Star Wars D&D set in like I didn't know which era to set it in, but I'm probably going to set it in between like episode 3 and 4, or do my own separate canon to post episode 6. So maybe it's like after episode 6 before episode 7, right?
Yeah.
Seems like a far more interesting period in like the Star Wars universe. But yeah, like it's nowhere near like the quality of like the Clone Wars. And like I said, like I'm looking forward to the final season of Star Wars Clone Wars because a lot more cooler characters there. And even Star Wars Rebels. Like, what did you think of Star Wars Rebels?
I think it kind of held the torch a little bit more from Clone Wars, where it's kind of like we kind of want to do the same thing, but kind of have a story that we want to kind of tell that relates to like our sequel kind of trilogies or whatever. So like, I don't know. I thought it was very I don't know. I feel like maybe it's kind of like the Legend of Korra to the Last Airbender almost, where it's
Yeah,
like
well, Legend of Korra. I mean, I think Legend of Korra is more good than bad. I will admit. Yeah, I think Rebels is a little bit like that. I think it had like a rocky first season, but I think like once like it kind of found its footing, and I think like the basis for it is much better as well. Like because they're like a traveling group of like they have their own spaceship and they're flying around to different like worlds and stuff. That gives them the opportunity to like go to different planets and have like a
exploration almost. Yeah.
yeah, like have a set doing like different things, I don't feel like I get that with Resistance, although the second season does set them up to travel. So I feel like they kind of missed out on, they like kind of did it too late, if that makes sense. And especially given that like the whole like the flying like it's not an academy, but it's basically like racing. They basically fly like do like racing on the platform to try and become the best like racer like in the galaxy kind of thing. And that's not even something that's played up, and it's something that's kind of thrown aside, which is a bit of a shame in the end. So yeah, so Star Wars Resistance, if you got time, watch it. If you don't that's all I gotta
Okay,
say.
that's an easy way to explain that one. If you have
Yeah.
time, you just go for it.
uh,
But yeah,
but what about you? What have you been watching?
moving on to something that I always talk about, and it's unfortunately it's ended, and I kind of knew it was going to end when the Disney Fox merger happened because it was too good to be true. But essentially, it's Legion. My favorite comic book show, pretty much, and it's last season 3. It's finally ended, 28 episodes in total, and wow, season 3 is it's very unique. I still really love the show, and it ended in such a way where it pretty much like I'm almost not mad that it ended just after 3 seasons, because it does wrap up everything in such a neat bow, because this is David's story. He's basically the main character of the show. Kind of brief rundown is kind of like he's in a mental asylum, and he feels like he I guess has these episodes, and he has someone talking to him in his head, and he feels like he is mentally unstable. He's schizophrenia, but really what you find out is he has this monster that's trapped inside of him, because back in time, when he was a little kid, his dad and this monster had a fight, and the only way to contain him is to put him in the kid. Now the father if anyone knows X-Men lore, is basically Xavier, Professor Xavier. He had this kid, and then he finds that out after the first season, and then a lot of events happen back and forth. I won't want to spoil it too much, but certain things happen where David splits from the main group of where he was with. They're kind of setting up the semi new X-Men, but they're not really X-Men. And then it moves on to the first episode of the first season of the third season, which we introduced to. Her name's not Blink. It's I forgot her name, but it's a new interpretation of the character.
Like the one from the X-Men Days of Future Past, that character?
Yeah, it's because that's Blink, but this is
so it's not that.
This one is a new character. I forgot her name, but it was very really well done, because essentially this character can time travel.
Okay.
Yeah, and it uses it in really great effect. Her name is Switch. The X-Men is Switch.
Cool.
And it's kind of done. The character is like this kind of cute Japanese girl who listens to headphones, and it's like has this weird aesthetic. And I feel like first of all, this show has really good aesthetics. Like I always praise the aesthetics, the cinematography, but the colors it uses, and it's very much. It very much feels like it is modern, but at the same time, it does feel like it's in the 70s. Like all the soundtrack music that they use is pretty much from the 70s. Has the 70s kind of color palette to it as well. So the whole plan is David is going to use Switch to go back in time to fix everything, because certain things happen in season 2 that makes the group split, and he wants to kind of fix it all or change up all these things and kind of deal with time travel. So essentially that's where like season 2 ends, and then season 3 starts with that. David's alone. He gets his own like little kind of, I guess, groupies, like following of him being like a god, for example. And he kind of has to deal with, I guess it's a time travel one for the third season, but it's not done in such a way where it's a cop out, because very much from early season 1, it kind of deals with like, who is David and how can he fix this, resolve this? Is he really schizophrenic, or is he hurting people because of the monster inside of him, or is he actually a bad person? That's what kind of the main crux of this whole season is, and the whole series. And one of the episodes in this season, he actually goes back in time to see his history. And basically we see a version of Charles Xavier, which is very interesting interpretation, and I think it's actually pretty good. He's actually played by the guy who played Daenerys Targaryen's brother, who died in the first season.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
is he bald?
No, he has a set of hair. But it's very interesting interpretation. It's done really well. It's done really well.
I can see that. I can see that working. Like if you kind of like, shorten the hair. I remember the character having like longer hair, right? Like
so this one he has like shorter hair. He very much actually looks like he actually looks like he actually looks like what is it? He actually looks like the guy who plays Magneto. I forget his name, but I actually. Yeah, he actually looks like him. I'm like, oh, that's a weird character thing. But yeah, they have that whole type of thing, and then we're dealing with Farouk, which is the baddie that was inside David. He's obviously now out after season 1, and he's kind of had a kind of working with his friends, being like, we want to help David. He has problems, etc., and it does these really cool, interesting fight scenes. Because obviously this TV show is more, I guess, grounded in the sense of, we don't have that much money of a budget. So what we're going to do is going to find unique and interesting ways to convey battles. So, end of second season, it was like a music battle almost, where it's like these kind of, artistic animation of these people fighting in the metaphysical mental world. In this one, since it deals with time, these like little time demons come out. And kind of they kind of jump back and jump forth, and it's kind of done and shot in a really unique and interesting way. There's even parts where, they even lose and it's so unique the way they do one of the fight scenes. It's done like kind of in a stop motion way, where it's kind of, they film the whole sequence, but they cut it down into kind of photos. So it's kind of like a photo after photo after photo, and you can kind of see it, and it looks very interesting, and it's very unique. In the way it kind of portrays that, but essentially, it's this battle between David wants to fix things and his old group of friends just want to, you know, bring him back to kind of be responsible for what he did. And so, you know,
Okay.
and you know, that's kind of the inner struggle between the whole season. And it's like, I really don't want to spoil much because, like, the show is very hard to talk about because it has a lot of things going on. Like, there are a lot of people out there on YouTube who just dissect every single episode, even just like the background stuff or what these characters do. And, you know, I think it wraps up in such a way where it kind of completes it, and in such a really great finale type of way, because not only do you get a showdown between David and Farouk, which is the past version and the present version, but you get David there working with his father, which is Professor Xavier, and kind of dealing with that as well. And it's kind of like him being, you know, because in this timeline, Professor Xavier has David as a kid, but, you know, him and his wife weren't prepared to have this kid, so they basically just give the kid away to someone else. You know, that's kind of the way it's kind of shown and portrayed. So in this one, it's kind of more like, why did you give me away? You know, trying to fix, you know, what kind of happened.
So essentially, like, it does a good job at kind of wrapping up his kind of personal story, but as well as like kind of the overarching like superhero aspect of the story, and kind of closing it off. Given that, like, I guess a lot of people also felt like, you know, maybe there might have been another season, but then, like, you know, maybe not. So being able to wrap it up in this season is kind of like a bit of a relief, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm very much happy that it's kind of complete in such a way. Like, I always talk about high praise for him, but it's the showrunner of the show is Noah Hawley. He writes, directs the majority of the show, and you know, he did the Fargo TV show, and and Legion, and pretty much everything he's done so far I've really enjoyed. He's actually written a new movie that's coming out with Natalie Portman called Lucy in the Sky, which is, I think, something got to do with astronauts in space. And apparently that I think he was in early talks to do a solo origin movie for Doctor Doom. Now, and apparently there might have been still talks that he had talks recently with Kevin Feige, so I have no idea if he's going to still do anything like that. But I feel like Noah Hawley has a lot of talent, and I feel like he might be one of those people that joins the MCU almost, but in his particular vision, because I feel like he's very much a type of person who has a vision and wants to show it. Because you know, Legion does have some cool superhero antics, but it's not the way you think it is. You know, even like the last, you know, in the last episode of this season, there's probably about 6 minutes, and it's not really fighting. It's just literally the cast singing a song, a Pink Floyd song, and it's done and it looks like a music video. So it's very artistic and experimental in the way it portrays things, and that's why I really enjoyed Legion, because, you know, in a day and age where there's so many comic book stuff, you know, we even see something like The Boys, where it's like more of a commentary about whether these guys are assholes. You know, I feel like Legion always stands out because it just filmed differently, and its subject matter is very much different. And I feel like that's why I always put it at a pedestal above more than anything else, because it does something different for the genre. You know, and that's why I give its praise. So definitely, if you haven't watched Legion, you've now got 28 episodes of something that's very interesting, very unique, and I hope it doesn't get lost. Like, I hope one day, 5 to 10 years, people are just like, that Legion show was really good. So I'd say I'd highly recommend Legion.
I mean, I started watching the first season, but I stopped. Not because I thought it was bad or anything. I think it's just, I don't know. I think it might just be because of how long some of the episodes were.
Yeah, and once again, it does have a very unique tone to it. So it's like, I always frame it to something like a Twin Peaks, where I'm like, or something like a Winding Refn's work, like Too Old to Die Young, where I'm like, I know that for some people this is like, they cannot do it. Like, you know, is it
usually 40 minutes an episode?
Yeah, it's around that 45 minutes episode. Sometimes like a 50. It just depends on
it might be. It might be something like that. I do have to give this show a go.
But it is very much it's definitely not one of those shows where you put in the background. I think it's like very much you you know, like in the first season, there was subtle hints of like every time there's red in the background, it means danger, you know, like, or like every time this character says this, something else happens. So there's very much, it's more, it has more going for it than just people talking, I guess. So I feel like, and that's why I always raise it up.
Yeah, I think it's good to hear. I think I'm more happy to hear that it ended well, because I think, once again, like, if I'm not mistaken, like it there was a potential for it to go longer. But obviously, like, you know, they said, hey, like, you know, season 3 is the final season, and, you know, definitely when like it suddenly dropped on you that, hey, this is your final season, it can be it can be a bit of a panic to try and get it all like working together and have a satisfying ending. I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why you don't want to put it on hold. Like, for example, Fox's other show, which is X-Men, The Gifted, that got canceled after 2 seasons, and it ended on a cliffhanger of Blink was coming back from the future, and it looked like they were going to do a Days of Future Past, but as a TV show.
Yes. Okay, but with like the bootleg X-Men that people don't care about.
Yeah, pretty much.
You tell me. Yeah. Okay.
But if we are going to talk about shows that have kind of cancelled with the cliffhanger, Krypton from Sci-Fi has been cancelled, and as mentioned from like I think last year when it came out, I'm just like, you know, Krypton's not as bad as people think it is, or no one's really paying attention to Krypton. I think like people should watch it. And I feel like the first season was pretty solid. I think the second season solid as well. It just didn't have the, I guess, tout, or people just totally forgot this show existed.
I don't know. I think I know what the problem with Krypton is. I think it doesn't feel like the world, like there's a lot of repetition, especially with this season. All right, to kind of give a little bit of a summary for Krypton, especially Krypton season 2, after the events of Brainiac, I guess, trying to take over Krypton and absorb it into and turn it as a part of his collection, thanks to Seg-El, the great grandfather of Kal-El, Superman. He gets trapped in the Phantom Zone in order to try and keep Brainiac from infecting all of Krypton. He subsequently escapes, but unfortunately he escapes alongside Brainiac as well. And we're also kind of dealing with the ramifications of the previous season, where Zod, who is one of Superman's like longtime enemies, time traveled and is now the new dictator of Krypton, and his plans to try and take over the galaxy.
God damn it, Zod.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, I like.
By the way, I like the actor's portrayal of Zod. By the way, I think he does a pretty good job.
Honestly, I think all of the actors in this show do a good job at the character that they have been, with the characters that they've been given. I think maybe Nissa Vex can be a little bit like, like in a scene, but like I still like her character. I like that she's like the cool assassin, like she's like the assassin character, right? Like she can use knives and she has like a military background and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, I think with this show, I can understand why people didn't watch it, even though this second season is chock-a-block full of like heaps of Superman references by comparison to the first season. Like the first season, I think they basically only had like Zod.
They'd have Doomsday.
Brainiac and Doomsday. But like Doomsday is kind of like a side mention. Whereas like in this season they have Brainiac, they have they also have who else do they have?
Lobo, sir.
Lobo. They Zod as well. They introduce like concepts like the Black Mercy, which is like essentially this plant that puts you in a dreamlike state. Am I missing anything else? I feel like there's
probably a lot more things, but like that's the thing. I haven't read as many Superman things, but like I know that there's probably a lot more extra stuff like hidden, and that's the thing. And I think that's why I really like just the show in general, because like aside from the Superman animated show, you don't really see much of Krypton, and it's kind of past. So I like knowing like all these different houses and like what they kind of stand for and where they are.
But here's the thing: they don't actually focus on the house's concept. I think this show would have been far more interesting if they had made it more like a Game of Thrones, which is kind of what the first season kind of does, but then it like switches over to, oh, by the way, like Brainiac's around and it's trying to destroy the planet. Like it kind of switches into what it is. Although I like the whole concept of like, oh, like like Seg, the main character, like he's no longer like he's like a, I forget what they're called, but like not homeless or maybe houseless or something, right? I think that they essentially don't have like a last name and therefore aren't considered, worthy to live with like all the like upper echelon, people on Krypton. But like again, that's not something that's ever really revisited. It kind of focuses more on like like a Star Wars-esque styled like rebellion versus the Empire plot, the thing is, I feel like the capital where Zod lives, and like or I guess like whoever's in charge, I feel like it's really badly designed because the characters constantly walk in, sneak past all the guards, sneak past like camera security, sneak past like getting shot. They constantly do that throughout this season in particular.
Mm-hmm.
That it's borderline like unbelievable.
Yeah, in general, there's a lot of like skipping like writing of like, oh, we don't really have a logical reason for this, so X. Like instead of like planning it out, being like, there's a reason because of all this. They're just like, we need to get here, so we'll make it easier to get there.
Oh yeah, I know this secret tunnel that we used when we would. Like there's literally a line exactly like.
Yeah, I think there actually is.
Like they're not delivering pizzas, but they might as well be at that stage.
Or even like the rest of the season had some like growing pains in a sense of like they got rid of certain things from season 1 that they didn't need, like the best friend bartender guy for the guy who came from the future, where it's like then they obviously they kill him off, right? It's like, yeah, because there's no reason for you, because I feel like the writers in the first season were kind of like, we need him to be the focal point for the audience so he can just exposition dump on all of us. But since they're just like, we're completely changing structure, he has no reason to live.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he kind of has like two best friend kind of characters. But yeah, they kind of give the other character like a bigger role. Although I kind of liked his sacrifice, and I liked that they gave him like a role as like a captain, and he was like after like Seg left, like in that 6 month period, he like became like a hardened fighter, although like a reluctant fighter, so to speak, right? Yeah, you had like not Adam Warlock, not Adam West.
Adam Warlock.
I forget the guy's name. Adam, right? They call him Adam. And yeah, like I like his character. Like kind of continues. They do like make a reference to him like breaking his legs and therefore given like a suit that's very akin to Adam Strange. Yeah, that's the reason why I was getting it confused.
Yeah,
Adam Strange. Yeah, Adam Strange's character, like he has like these like this cool like rocket suit in like the comics and stuff. They kind of like hint at like him becoming that particular hero at the end of this season. You have like the return of like Lyta Zod, who is like a romantic interest of Seg, but it's like, oh, is she pro Zod, or is she going to come back now that she's found out that Seg is back from the Phantom Zone? Ooh, the spooky Phantom Zone. I do like the usage of the Phantom Zone in this show, though.
Yeah, it's not like a rotating wet square or whatever it is, but that it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's hell, or it's not like the Phantom projector isn't like something that you can find in like any high school like class where they're trying to show like a film on a big projector. Like it actually seems like a really cool device, and something that actually seems like a scary ass prison. I like the scenes with like Seg and Brainiac sharing the same like mind. I thought that was like a really cool concept, but they didn't have that stay for long. And I feel like
the season went really quickly because the two timelines kind of go together, where it's like it's kind of Zeg and Brainiac, and then it kind of like goes
Oh,
back and
Brainiac
forth,
dies. Oh,
and
oh,
and, and
Brainiac's
then and
back.
then I still
Yeah.
gotta defeat Zod, and so instead of having a one focus on one thing, it's more like two things at once, and then all of a sudden like Brainiac last minute does something, and it's like, oh damn.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I think yeah, there definitely seems to be like writing issues and writing inconsistencies, but like again, I think like the base is interesting. I think there's just like as you said, there's like a lot of like when they went to make this show, they were like, okay, we need to come from this scene to that scene, and it's almost like they could have done like a wipe, and that might have been done the same job as opposed to like them explaining, okay, we're gonna go through this tunnel system because it's like, man, seriously, the capital is really understaffed or under budgeted or under something like, and you'd think Zod, who from the future, so like a more advanced future, would have like a better security in the capital. It just bothered me so much how many times I'm sure they must have come back to that particular like throne room or something like that like 5 times.
Yeah, it was more like, oh, we need to get into here because this character's there, we just steal something. Then, and then like there's one
Oh, we
time,
have to save
and
someone,
then they
or
get
have
and
to
then they get captured as well. But they're just like, in the end they get freed. In the end,
yeah.
but yeah. Aside from that, what do you feel about like because the whole side plot is kind of like Zod is pretty much weaponized Doomsday to take over the rebels, kind of, and just kind of treat them and just be like, yep, we're gonna get rid of them. So like I thought that was kind of interesting because like, we don't really see, I guess, much of Doomsday aside from the obvious Superman part. So it's good to at least see even just like the origin of I think of Doomsday. That was at least there was something there as well. That I thought that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of that's very unique from a TV perspective. I I do agree. Um, I already knew about like the kind of origin and basis of Doomsday. Like it's been like kind of retconned and fixed up here and there.
Because when the
Um,
original was just like, yeah, he's just exists, and then like,
no. It's essentially what they show in the show as well. He's essentially like a weapon that Krypton created, where they basically go. I think it was maybe one scientist. Like it's not like he wasn't like a L or he wasn't a Zod either. Like they kind of have the thing of like, ooh, L's and Zods created Doomsday. Like I kind of felt that was like a little bit too extra. Like yeah, all right, we get it. Like L's and Zods are important.
dicks.
All right, come on. Yeah, but they're everywhere. Like why not show like a different house with a different last name?
Mm.
Like no, like there's got to be other families who also do cool science shit. Like why not make a reference to that? Anyways, it's only a small guy, but yeah, but it's essentially the same thing. They basically got a dude, killed him over and over again until he and revived him until he developed like natural resistance to those things. Obviously that doesn't kind of work with modern science, I guess, like because you don't just evolve things by being exposed to them, but like yeah, you can develop like resistances and stuff if you're like exposed to like a mutagen. I don't know if that's what they kind of explained it to be. I don't remember it case, but that's just my like science nerdiness kind of like leaking
Just
leaking
going
out in
through,
that
it's like,
regard.
actually no, that wouldn't happen.
Actually, it wouldn't be like that, and then I push up my glasses that I don't have. um, but yeah, like it is definitely a very interesting and cool to see Doomsday up on like the I guess small screen, so to speak.
Mm.
and
All
and
right.
again, like I think a lot of the budget went into doing the CGI for it. It looked cool. I liked all the scenes with Doomsday, and also like in the scene where he's like fighting all the like the soldiers and stuff. It's just like it's straight brutal.
Yeah,
um
I'm surprised like how I guess mature it was. I'm like, man, that's someone's head, like stuff like that. I'm like, man, that's not
yeah, you usually don't see like people getting like charred up or things like throughout the whole show, but like yeah, in this, oh, people are being crushed, their heads get squished, like holy crap, like it was dope as
and
shit.
that's why I was very interested because like since Krypton has been canceled, they introduced the character Lobo, which he was gonna have his original spin-off, and I feel like
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, so long as you kind of kept him as a very crass character who's very mature, I could have worked, but obviously I think they just maybe the overheads at DC is just kind of like, yeah, we have our own streaming service, so bye bye like sci-fi with your stuff because we can do our own thing and
Well,
introduce our own
yeah,
like
well, I
version of
mean,
Lobo.
Well, I mean, I think obviously because like they're probably not getting the like the return from like viewers watching this show. Because again, I kind of feel again, I don't know if you agree. There's a lot of repetition in this show. Oh, I'm gonna go do this, and oh, I'm gonna leave this person, and oh, this person gets captured, and it's like the overall plot doesn't it seem like very consistent. It's just like the plot just convenient. It's like they're like, oh, there's all this stuff that we have to get to, but then we're gonna get to that point in a very like roundabout way, and
Mm.
that's how I kind of feel about it. And this is the case for I think season one as well. I think it's just more explicit in this, like as if there was a lot of filler. Like if you cut all the filler, um, maybe this show could be cut down to like maybe 5 episodes or
Mm.
6 episodes. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too hard, but maybe like 6 episodes,
No, no,
right?
it makes complete sense. But like in the end, like I thought it was kind of maybe going in an interesting way because the cliffhanger that we'll never see is that Brainiac is basically still alive, takes more or less Superman and just fly.
Well, no, not
No, not
Superman.
Superman. Sorry, it's dad.
Superman's
Yeah,
dad.
yeah, I
Yeah,
forget. Yeah, but essentially just takes the dad and just
fucks off. Yeah.
flies off, and then it's just like, and then it's basically teaming up with
Lo-
Lobo to basically
Lobo.
yeah.
Well. The other thing that they also set up is like you had Nissa Vex. She uses Adam Strange's time traveling device to go to like another planet, and the planet that she actually lands on, I believe, is Ran. And there's a big plot point. Ran, the people of Ran are the people who created the technology that like allows Adam Strange to do his like cool teleporting um, you know stuff that he does, right?
Mm.
But the other thing that you kind of see in the air, you see a bunch of winged, uh, you know, uh, men or like humans, right? Winged humans, and those are essentially the people from Thanagar, which are Hawkman, who is where Hawkman and Hawkwoman in one of their interpretation. The history for Hawkman and Hawkwoman are like all over the. I'd need like a complete separate section to go to go over all of that. It's completely fucked. Although in the Rebirth Hawkman series, which is kind of set after the events of Dark Knight's Metal, they do actually do a very, very good job at explaining. Because, like, the original version of Hawkman was like, if you've seen Legends of Tomorrow, that's essentially what the original version of Hawkman is. It's,
Okay.
yeah, it's like essentially it's like a prince and a prince and a kind of princess or whatever, like they get given powers by like some asteroid or some shit, and they get cool hawk powers.
Gotcha.
But then like it got retcon, with the universe exploding in DC every like 2 years or something.
It doesn't really
It got
matter in the end.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, by the way, their origin is now they're from a alien planet called Thanagar, and all the people on Thanagar like have these like hawk wings and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, we're gonna change it again. And so like in the Rebirth theory series, they basically say like, oh, actually, the actual guy, you know, the Hawkman guy, he actually has multiple reincarnations on like every planet, on every like kind of civilization, on every throughout time and space. That's why like, he can exist, like there's like a version of him that's on Thanagar, but then there's also a version on him on Earth. And so they explained that by having, oh, his character and Hawkwoman kind of go, or Hawkgirl rather, like kind of uh transgress through time and space in order to make up for like the big sin that he did in the past, which I won't spoil because it's a very good. But yeah, so yeah, they kind of said. So I ended up just having a section explaining the whole origin of Hawkman, anyways. But
Needed to be
anyway,
done.
but one of the big kind of storylines is like the Ran Thanagar war, and I think that's the reason why they show Nisavex talking to like these aliens being all scarred and stuff, and the next minute you see like the Thanagarians up in the sky, because I think it's supposed to set up that particular story as well, and it's supposed to kind of intersect or combine with what's going on with Seg and his story. But ultimately, we're not going to get that story, so that's unfortunate. But hey, what can you do?
Yeah, you know, like he could petition back, but you know, maybe DC's like,
I
you know, like who
I don't care
knows?
enough.
Because like you know,
I don't.
Titans is coming back. You know, Doom
The
Patrol's
Titans is coming back.
renewed. Well, at some point, you know, like you know, the DC's got a lot more
Hmm.
stuff coming out, so maybe instead of being like, oh yeah, we're gonna focus on the grandfather of Superman, maybe they can actually do some like Superboy
I
stuff,
mean,
or who knows,
I
with the
really
Titans.
this entire show would have been significantly better, in my opinion, if they just centered it around Clark Kent and Superman. Again, I get it that like, oh, maybe DC doesn't want to do like a version of Superman. All right, I get it, but it's like you're essentially once again doing the very thing that Gotham did, which was, oh, let's get all of Batman's supervillains and then give it to another character, which essentially is James Gordon, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Gotham TV series, and it's the same thing here. Let's get all of Superman's villains and just give it to his great grandpa, right? It's kind of lazy, and I don't like it. But like I get that they have to work within like the confines of whatever rights that DC will generously give them to make. I just hope that it means that maybe for like future production of TV series, like DC will get to, well, like if they're going to publish it on their platform, it's going to have a little bit more like freedom for creativity, and with like Titans as well, like Titans, good series, like rocky but good series, and Titans 2 is kind of looking to set up like cool stuff as well. So I look forward to that series. If you like kind of, um, if you want to know a little bit about like Krypton and the origin of like some of the stuff that happens on the world where Superman originally comes from, like maybe give this a watch. But I don't know, I wouldn't say this like seasons 1 and 2 of Krypton is like a high priority watch, especially given that it technically ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
You
more or
know?
less. Like I'd say, if you wanted to learn about the history of kind of Krypton or have a little bit more, I think everyone's kind of like most people talk about the Batman animated series, but the Superman one is pretty good as well. Obviously, it's not nearly as good, but it still has some good class. Or even like I think the first like 3 or 4 episodes is purely on Krypton. So it doesn't even have Superman in it. So I feel like that was very interesting, and that's how my knowledge of kind of Krypton came forward. But yeah, I'd say it's an okay show. It's, as mentioned, with like something like The Gifted, I feel like it's gonna be one of those shows that gets lost in time, and then like 10 years time, it'll be on a list being like, 10 TV shows that are based on superheroes that you don't even know about, that you don't, it'll be like Inhumans will be on there, like it'll be stuff like that, Cloak and Dagger,
Oh, and
Defenders will be on there, something like that. It'll be on there, one of those types of ones.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be pretty fair though. I think it's not like something that kind of sticks out as being as good. Like, I mean, I enjoy Gotham more than,
Yeah,
right? Like,
Gotham had I think a more stricter formula that was more like, it had good at setups, I guess. Like it had
yeah, and
more.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, this is given that like I don't actually like Gotham. It definitely isn't like the best thing like you know DC has ever like had a hand in making when it comes to live action. But like that goes to show that like there's a lot of potential for DC, and I think it can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that's the positivity that we can take out.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that's gonna be us for this week. Remember, you can always listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and our YouTube channel, where we do stream every week on our channel, Marketing Movies. So until next time, Superman is Henry Cavill in maybe the Krypton universe, but we'll never know. So until next time, see you guys.
Catch ya.